Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 news. The most important qualifying of the year is over. Ferrari, a phenomenal day for them with Charles Leclerc on pole, but amid a difficult day for Red Bull and of course the Mercedes drivers, Lewis Hamilton has pipped Charles Leclerc to win this year's Drivers' Championship over Max Verstappen. Very much enjoying your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. Plenty to dive into today, of course. Got all this qualifying to talk about and the implications for tomorrow, because this race tomorrow might not be as straightforward with the rain potentially coming as it usually is here in Monaco. Of course, we'll get to this moment soon. This just to mention as well, because Monaco apparently might be in danger of not even being on the calendar next season. Toby Greener reckons that next year might feature up to 24 races. This year was meant to be 23. Russia, of course, is gone. Haven't had a replacement for it, so only 22. But apparently there's a few reasons why F1 doesn't really like Monaco right now, and apparently one of them is because they have the Tag Heuer kind of advertisements there, whereas they have the partnership with Rolex. Apparently that's kind of annoying them a little bit. Also, it must be said that kind of, the viewing perspective, right, the broadcasting wasn't particularly good, especially in practice, because the local studio kind of does it as opposed to the F1 guys. So there might be a few reasons they're looking away from Monaco, even though, of course, it is, a staple, seemingly, on the calendar, the crown and the jewel, some would certainly say. And it does create very exciting and crazy Saturdays like we had today, but yeah, might not be here for too much longer. This also from Mattia Binotto, right, because the big talking point has been, at least among the big spenders, right, the likes of Red Bull, Ferrari and Mercedes, that, the budget cap is actually too low this season. The big talking point really is around inflation, right, being 6%, and I'm pretty sure transport costs have gone up by way more than 6%, so that is kind of a key concern, and I'm sure the FA are looking at this thinking, okay, maybe it's fair enough to a degree that the transportation costs and stuff have risen by so much, maybe the budget cap does need to be upped. But of course, look, if you are one of these top three teams that usually spends a lot of money, like, of course they have other motives, they have ulterior motives to try and up the budget cap so they can spend more, develop their car, win the championship, this type of stuff. And of course, the other teams that have, very deliberately said, okay, look, this is how we're going to deal with the inflation, this is what we're going to do to make sure we can hit the budget cap anyway. For them just to raise it for the top teams seems somewhat unfair on the teams that have deliberately tried to plan their spending so that they can't kind of stick to that limit, right? And as Mattia Binotto, Andrew Schroevlin, right, all these guys, Christian Horner, were saying in the press conference, I believe Toto Wolff today had some sort of, he basically lost his voice or something, not sure if he caught anything from Lando Norris, that would be the case, but apparently Alfa Romeo's Fred Vasseur was like, look, the best solution if you want to reach the budget cap is to switch off the wind tunnel, stop bringing developments every race. We can all do that, right? Saying, look, if you want to actually make this happen and you want to hit the budget cap, let's just, let's just keep it as it is and stop bringing developments like the kind of more frugal teams are doing right now. So that's certainly going to be an ongoing battle as time progresses. But let's talk about the actual driving on the day. So again here, rather interesting, FP3 topped by Sergio Perez, just a little bit above Leclerc. But I believe these guys were top three all weekend, frankly, through all the sessions, right? It turned out to be that way in qualifying as well, of course, in varying orders. But yeah, Perez looked pretty good on the Red Bull. And interestingly, really, like Verstappen, he was getting close, obviously, to Leclerc and to Perez at times, but was kind of behind where his teammate was, which is rather rare, right? Verstappen, of course, won last year's race, usually is a little bit, maybe a tenth or so of a second, something like that, quicker than Perez in qualifying. But yeah, this weekend didn't really seem to have what it takes, right? And of course, that practically is the worst case scenario on a circuit like Monaco. And I do really wonder, we'll look at quali here in a second, what will happen? The fact that Perez is ahead of Verstappen, with kind of some Red Bull team orders might come into play. We'll see how it goes, of course. But anyway, just to mention this real quick before we dive into qualifying itself, the Lewis Hamilton stuff on Ferrari. Now, of course, we do know that the Barcelona PU issue that Charles Leclerc has, as they were saying, they were kind of having some issues again with it so far this weekend. But they're saying, look, they found the root cause, we fixed it for future races. That's all the detail that he will say at the time. So they say that they fixed all these PU problems, so Charles Leclerc being on pole as he is should, in theory, have an easy run through all the way to the checkered flag. But it's never that easy with Charles Leclerc around Monaco, it seems. Now, with the two drivers, Charles Leclerc, Max Verstappen, pretty much neck and neck at this point in the season after a hectic first 6 races, the question has been, okay, who's going to run away with it, right? Is the development going to go the way of Red Bull? Is the reliability going to go the way of Red Bull or Ferrari? It's really difficult to say which driver is on top of their game right now, because both of them seem to be pretty much in level pegging. But in fairness, Leclerc probably this season has certainly been the better qualifier, and also the Ferrari seems to be the better qualifying car, Red Bull more so in the race. This article comes out here on Corriere. I'll leave a link for you guys down below, but a few interesting things I wanted to dive into. Of course, this is translated, it's not exactly perfect, but as it's kind of asked right here, this is Hamilton, of course, speaking. I've been with these guys for 10 years. I know how they work, the type of culture, no processes, we win and we lose together. They're highly motivated, they give their souls to bring us back up, so he was convinced they would be able to catch up. As he says, look, it's not just a question of records, I'm saying, look, of course I believe still in the 8th title that he can deliver it, but this season it doesn't seem to him to be particularly likely. And he also mentions actually the possibility of not retiring yet. As he says, let's take this season, I probably won't win the title, but I feel the same pleasure of competing as when I started. So why should I stop competing? Maybe one day when I won't be able to take the pressure anymore, I'll be tired. That day hasn't come yet. So basically indicating, look, he's not looking to retire after this year or even next year either. And who knows if next year from the start of the year Mercedes can be a little bit more competitive, because because, of course, Monaco was a difficult weekend for them, as many expected it would be. But the Ferrari just seems to be so good in qualifying around like every track. The Red Bull seems to take an awful lot of setup to get good. The Ferrari just turns up and is really good around like every circuit, and this one certainly seems to suit it as well, as you might well expect. But of course, well, Hamilton then gets asked, who's going to win the championship? Is it going to be Verstappen or is it going to be Leclerc? So if you take it for granted that we at Mercedes are done for, like, don't underestimate, as he says, right? So who knows what they think they can do on maybe more traditional tracks through the rest of the season. But yeah, Ferrari is stronger in qualifying, Red Bull is stronger in the race. But it changes with every race. Ferrari has shown they know how to build a great car, and Charles is very strong. So saying effectively he's backing Leclerc to win this championship ahead of Verstappen. And he also goes on to say, I'd like to add one more thing. If I could sit with the fans over there, I would support Charles. I am a Ferrari fan, right? So I wonder if there's an alternate timeline and kind of a parallel universe where Hamilton was a Ferrari driver at one point or another. Basically saying, look, he believes Charles will win. He believes that Ferrari will take the championship. And of course, we'll see how that goes. He also mentions, like, well, he was asked, is Verstappen the strongest rival you've ever faced? He says, like, he's up there, but, Alonso, there's been some other ones that maybe pip him, at least in Hamilton's opinion, at the present time. So he reckons Leclerc's going to win the championship, and it might well start with this weekend's. Let's dive into how quali went. Q1 was interesting, actually. Like, the end of quali was pretty unfortunate for Gasly and some other drivers because they got their laps kind of ruined. When Tsunoda clipped the wall, a red flag happened, and it meant that, some drivers, their good laps got invalidated, and Albon, Gasly, Stroll, Latifi, and Zhou go out in Q1. Difficult times for Gasly, especially because it was his teammate Tsunoda that effectively messed up his fastest lap attempt. Zhou as well, given all the talk that Alfa Romeo might be really good around this circuit going into the weekend, didn't work out for them at all. Q2, honestly, was again, Daniel Ricciardo, man, like, this guy is on the struggle bus right now. Like, it's not like the McLaren was terrible around here. Norris put it on P5, the best of the rest, and Ricciardo's here in P14. Really difficult time for him. Of course, Valtteri Bottas, I was kind of hoping he might get top 10. Who knows where he's going to go from there, because theoretically, the Alfa Romeo should have been pretty good in these lower corners. Didn't work out here, though. Tsunoda P11, Magnussen P13, Schumacher P15. So, yeah, tough for the Hatters as well, because they looked pretty good at the early part of Q1. But yeah, Daniel Ricciardo really the big story of this Q2. But in fairness, another big story was Sebastian Vettel putting it into Q3. I believe I saw a stat that Vettel is the only driver, maybe not the only driver, but he's put it in the top 10 every year he's been at Monaco since 2009, which is, quite something to get to Q3 all of those years in some of the cars he's had the last couple of years, most certainly. He gets through as well, and then the start of Q1, or the start of Q3, sorry, Leclerc was absolutely out of control. He put in a 1:11.3. That's honestly really rapid in these New Year's cars. I was kind of wondering how much time these cars would lose. Last year's pole, or 2019's pole, was I think the quickest that we have seen ever, which was Hamilton with a 1:10.1. And honestly, in the final lap that Leclerc did, he might have even got within a second of that time from Hamilton if the red flag didn't come out. But he puts in a phenomenal lap time initially. No one could really get within 2/10 of this. And then the final lap he did, the final run he was having, he was on for a quicker time before the red flag comes out and into the session. But of course, Leclerc's probably going to take that at the end of the day, with the pole position effectively getting confirmed at that point. With 4 minutes to go, this was the situation. Interestingly enough, it was Hamilton, Russell, and then kind of Russell and Hamilton both put on new sets of tyres, and we're going to go again for another lap. But at this point, the top four was follows Leclerc, Sainz, Perez, Verstappen, which pretty much was where the drivers seemed to be over the course of the weekend. Alonso had a monster couple of laps that he put in. Like, he was really on top of his game here with the Alpine. I was very impressed with him. Ocon got through to Q3 as well, and Vettel was here also. But yeah, Norris was driving phenomenally also in the McLaren, right? So it seemed to be really battle for best of the rest between Hamilton, Norris, Russell, Alonso, who was going to take that kind of P5. And then with the final laps coming through, Russell manages to do a quicker one than Hamilton with those new fresher set of tyres. And then Hamilton's going again and gets his lap messed up by the red flag that comes through. Verstappen, of course, was only P4 at this point. I'm pretty sure it was about 0.5 of a second down on what Leclerc was doing here. Like, definitely didn't seem to be so comfortable through the first sector, especially. He lost about 0.3 of a second, and after that, about 1/10 in each sector after that. So definitely the Red Bull in qualifying, as maybe expected, wasn't quite as sharp as the Ferrari this weekend. And then this happens, right? Perez, of course, I pretty much expected the final lap, with qualifying being so important, the drivers have to go effectively all out here, right? And someone was going to do something at this point, and it's Perez who makes a mistake here into Portier. And it was interesting, actually, because Sainz, after seeing it, he saw the yellow flags just to his left, and by the time I think he registered them, by the time he was braking into this corner, then he just spun out and actually backed into, effectively hit Perez here. So Perez spins out, the red flag comes through, Sainz hits him as well. Verstappen then comes around the corner and was a pretty good first sector for him, actually, and effectively just has to say, call it a day at this point, and then all the flags come out, and the sector with 30 seconds left is brought to a close. But even at this point, Leclerc was up about 0.2 of a second on his best time. So probably he would have been on pole regardless, but it does effectively solidify what could have been a good lap for Verstappen, right? Who knows how that would have gone. And as Sainz says, right, Perez crashed in front of me, saw the yellow flag at that corner, I hit the brakes and spun. It's a shame another year that the red flag ended the session and I could not go for pole. So good to see Sainz's mindset here. I think he's like, look, I'm not here to be second fiddle to Leclerc, I'm here to go for pole. And he was pretty close to Leclerc this weekend, to be honest. compared to where he has been most recently. And a front row lockout for Ferrari here at Monaco is exactly what the doctor ordered for them, because they certainly need a good weekend here to get back into the championship running with the progress that Red Bull have made over these last few races. This, of course, then was the top 10 as it stands. We can actually look at it in a bit more detail right here. These were actually the first sector times just before the red flag came out, so you can see an improvement for Verstappen in that first sector before the red flag comes through. But still, even then, Leclerc was up about a 1/10.5 on Verstappen's quickest first sector in his kind of, well, final flying lap, which he didn't get to complete, unfortunately, for him, because I wonder what the time would have been. But as you can see, 2/10 up on Sainz, just behind is Perez, just behind that is Verstappen. A little bit back is Norris, though. Like, honestly, what a performance from him, having, pretty much unwell coming into this weekend with tonsillitis. Puts in a monster lap here for P5. Russell right behind him, and honestly quite significantly behind him. And Alonso manages to put it in between the two Mercedes, with Hamilton not really been able to put in a great last lap of the day. But yeah, the overall qualification looks like this. So these are all the starting positions, if you guys are unfamiliar. But yeah, it certainly has to be said, tomorrow could be a rather different story. As Max Verstappen was asked after the race, will you do a little rain dance tonight? Because the rumour has it, the weather forecast says that tomorrow it may be a wet Monaco Grand Prix, which certainly puts everything in question. Usually pretty much impossible to overtake around Monaco if it's dry. If it's wet though, everything goes out the window. If there's rain coming through, if there's more pit stops, right, and people have to go onto wet intermediate tyres, whatever the case might be, it's obviously going to be way more hectic, and there's definitely room for the driver's ability to show through in those circumstances, rather than just putting the car where it needs to be to make it impossible for the guy behind you to get through with the current state of these cars in Formula 1. Honestly, the cars that the Monaco track was, I suppose, designed for, like back in the day, are probably like 3 times as small as these current ones, right? So it's just a difficult time, honestly, to overtake. But look at this, right? The rain forecast tomorrow says around about race time it's going to be 70%-ish likelihood of it raining. Google here is even indicating a thunderstorm, right? So if that's the case, then things get pretty exciting. But there we have it for the day. Very much enjoyed to all your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new as always. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.